Give me the next 30 minutes, and I won't teach you how to memorize more facts. I want to show you something more useful. How to look at people, decisions, opportunities, and problems with a clearer mind. Because being intelligent isn't simply knowing more information. Sometimes, intelligence is knowing what to pay attention to. A person can have degrees, experience, and an impressive vocabulary, and still be surprisingly easy to manipulate. Why? Because they trust appearances, they believe promises without checking patterns. They assume everyone sees the world the same way they do. And they confuse what should happen with what actually happens today. We're going to challenge those habits. I'll show you 7 mental shifts that can make you more observant, more difficult to deceive, and better at making decisions. Not because you'll suddenly become smarter than everyone else, but because you'll start asking better questions. And once you learn to see certain patterns, you may notice them everywhere. So let's begin. People communicate with words, but words aren't the only information they're giving you. Their choices, habits, timing, consistency, and reactions are also communicating. Someone can tell you they value your time. Stop everything. But what happens when they're repeatedly late? Someone can promise they'll change. But what happens over the next few weeks? Someone can describe themselves as reliable. But what happens when responsibility actually lands on their shoulders? This doesn't mean every person who fails to keep a promise is secretly dishonest. People change their minds. Circumstances change. Good intentions can disappear when circumstances change. That's precisely why behavior is useful. Instead of asking only, "What did they say?" ask, "What happened afterward?" That's a much stronger question. Imagine someone tells you, "I'm going to start taking this seriously." You don't have to immediately believe them. You also don't have to immediately accuse them of lying. Simply observe. Do their decisions begin to match their statement? If yes, you have evidence. If nothing changes, you have evidence too. This is one of the simplest upgrades you can make to your thinking. Don't judge a person by one sentence. Study the pattern. And remember, this applies to yourself too. We often judge ourselves by our intentions, while judging everyone else by their results. I wanted to do it. I meant well. I was planning to. Those statements may be true, but your behavior still tells the story. When you learn to compare intentions with actions, you become much better at understanding reality. You don't need to become suspicious of everyone. You simply become more observant. And observation is where better judgment begins. Here's another powerful question. What does this person have to gain? Whenever someone makes a decision, there is usually some motivation behind it. That motivation could be money, recognition, security, approval, tasi, comfort, avoiding embarrassment, helping someone they care about, protecting their reputation, or simply doing what they personally believe is right. Human motivation is complicated. That's why the idea that everyone acts for exactly one reason is too simplistic. But incentives still matter. Suppose a salesperson tells you that a particular product is absolutely necessary. Before accepting the recommendation, ask, does this person benefit if I buy it? Maybe they do. That doesn't automatically mean they're lying. But now you have important context. The same principle works everywhere. A friend gives you advice. A company makes a promise. A politician announces a policy. An influencer recommends a product. A manager makes a decision. Instead of only asking, "What are they saying?" ask, "What incentives might be influencing this?" This question doesn't tell you whether someone is good or bad. It tells you what forces might be shaping their behavior. And that's a huge difference, because people aren't robots. Their decisions are influenced by emotions, values, relationships, circumstances, and incentives. When you understand those forces, people's behavior becomes easier to interpret. And there's another important lesson here. You have incentives too. Your brain can justify decisions because you want a particular outcome. You may believe you're being completely objective while unconsciously protecting your ego. That's why understanding incentives isn't just a tool for analyzing other people. It's a tool for analyzing yourself. Before making an important decision, ask, "What outcome do I secretly want?" That one question can expose biases you didn't realize you had. This doesn't mean fairness is worthless. It means reality doesn't guarantee equal outcomes. Two people can work equally hard and receive different results. Someone can be talented and still miss an opportunity. Someone else can get lucky at exactly the right moment. Context can matter. Timing can matter. Stories can matter. Location can matter. Opportunity can matter. And sometimes circumstances simply don't cooperate. This can be frustrating. But fighting reality doesn't make it disappear. Imagine two people working toward the same goal. One has experience, useful connections, financial support, and access to better opportunities. The other has talent and determination, but far fewer resources. Effort matters, but effort isn't the only variable. That's why a better question isn't, "Why isn't the world rewarding me fairly?" Ask, "What factors are actually producing the result I want?" Maybe you need better skills. Maybe you need better communication. Maybe you need to build relationships. Maybe you need more experience. Maybe you need to change your strategy. Maybe you need to find a different environment. The point isn't to become cynical. The point is to stop wasting energy arguing with reality. You can believe something should be different while still understanding how it currently works. That's maturity. And once you understand the real variables affecting an outcome, you can start changing the variables you actually control. Every society has rules. Some are legal, some are social, some are professional. Some are simply traditions people follow because everyone else follows them. But here's the important distinction. A rule existing doesn't automatically mean everyone experiences its consequences equally. People have different levels of money, influence, knowledge, authority, and access. That means the same situation can produce completely different consequences for different people. Someone with strong legal representation may handle a dispute very differently from someone who has no idea how the system works. An experienced negotiator may receive a completely different deal from someone who never negotiates. A person with authority may have options that an ordinary employee doesn't have. This isn't an argument for breaking laws, quite the opposite. Understanding the difference between legal rules, social expectations, and strategic choices can help you navigate situations more intelligently. For example, many people believe they must always say yes because they don't want to disappoint others. That's not a law. It's a social expectation they've placed on themselves. Someone else may believe they must stay in the same job forever because they were taught that loyalty is everything. Again, that's not a law, it's a belief. And sometimes the biggest limitation isn't an external rule. It's a rule you've created inside your own head. So ask yourself, is this genuinely required? Or have I simply assumed that it is? That question can open doors. But don't confuse intelligence with recklessness. Being strategic doesn't mean ignoring laws or hurting other people. It means understanding the difference between what is actually required and what you've merely been conditioned to expect. Modern life gives you more information than any previous generation had access to. News, notifications, short videos, opinions, arguments, trends, statistics, headlines, rumors. Everyone seems to have something to say. But more information doesn't automatically create better decisions. Sometimes it creates confusion. The smartest thing you can do is learn to identify the information that actually changes your decision. Imagine you're trying to decide whether to buy something. You might read 50 reviews, watch 10 videos, scroll through hundreds of comments, and still not know what to do. Why? Because you collected information without deciding which information matters. Instead, identify the critical variables. What is the price? What problem does it solve? What are the major disadvantages? How reliable is it? Is there a better alternative? Now you're not drowning in information. You're filtering it. This applies to people too. Someone might have a huge social media following. That doesn't automatically mean their advice is correct. A person might speak confidently. Confidence isn't evidence. A video might have millions of views. Popularity isn't proof. The ability to separate attention from evidence is becoming more important every year. So, whenever you encounter a strong claim, pause. Ask, what evidence supports this? What evidence would change my mind? Who benefits if I believe it? And, most importantly, is this information actually useful for the decision I'm making? That's how you protect your attention. Most people think about what happens next. Better thinkers also ask, and then what? That's second-order thinking. Man, imagine you make a decision that gives you an immediate benefit. Great. But what happens afterward? Maybe you save money today, but create a bigger expense later. Maybe you avoid a difficult conversation today, but create a larger problem next month. Maybe you choose the easiest option now, but make your future situation harder. The immediate result isn't the whole story. Let's take a simple example. Someone wants to improve their grades. They could memorize everything the night before an exam. That might help temporarily. But what's the second-order consequence? They may forget the material quickly. They may become dependent on last-minute studying. They may struggle when the subject becomes more advanced. A better strategy considers the long-term effect. This way of thinking works in almost every area. Before making a major decision, ask, what happens immediately? Then, what happens after that? And then, if this continues for a year, where does it lead? That final question can completely change your choices. Because small decisions repeated over time become large outcomes. Your habits are basically second-order consequences happening slowly. One workout doesn't transform your fitness. One study session doesn't transform your knowledge. One bad habit doesn't destroy your future. But repeated behavior compounds. That's why intelligent people don't only ask, will this work? They also ask, what will this create? This may be the most important shift of all. You can learn psychology. You can study incentives. You can observe behavior. You can understand systems. But if you can't recognize your own biases, all that knowledge can become another way to fool yourself. Your brain doesn't simply search for truth. It also searches for consistency. If you strongly believe something, you'll naturally notice information that supports it. If you dislike someone, their mistakes may seem more important. If you desperately want an opportunity, warning signs may become easier to ignore. If you're afraid of failure, you may convince yourself that quitting is actually wisdom. This is why self-awareness matters. When you feel extremely certain about something, don't automatically trust the feeling. Pause, ask, why am I so convinced? What would I think if someone I respected disagreed? What evidence would prove me wrong? Am I protecting my ego? Do I want this to be true, or do I have evidence that it is true? These questions are uncomfortable, but discomfort isn't always a warning sign. Sometimes discomfort is what learning feels like. The goal isn't to eliminate emotion. Emotion is part of being human. The goal is to stop emotion from secretly making every decision for you. And there's another important lesson. You don't need to become cold. You don't need to assume everyone is manipulating you. You don't need to believe that kindness is weakness. You don't need to treat every relationship like a business transaction. You don't need to become obsessed with power. Real intelligence is more balanced than that. It allows you to recognize that people can be generous and self-interested. They can make mistakes and genuinely care. The world can contain unfairness and still contain fairness. Rules can be imperfect and still be important. Someone can disappoint you without being evil, and you can protect yourself without becoming cynical. That's the difference between becoming wiser and simply becoming suspicious. So, let's bring everything together. First, watch patterns, not promises. Second, understand incentives, including your own. Third, accept that outcomes aren't always perfectly fair. Then focus on what you can influence. Fourth, separate real constraints from assumptions you've created. Fifth, filter information instead of consuming everything. Sixth, think beyond the immediate consequence. And seventh, question your own thinking before assuming everyone else is the problem. These ideas won't make you dangerously smart. Something better can happen. They can make you harder to fool and easier to reason with. Because the goal isn't to walk into a room believing you're smarter than everyone there. The goal is to walk into that room knowing you might be wrong. That's real intellectual strength. You observe, you question, you listen, you compare words with actions, you look for incentives, you consider evidence, you think about consequences, and when new information appears, you're willing to update your opinion. That's not weakness. That's intelligence. The most powerful upgrade isn't learning how to control other people. It's learning how to control your own attention, assumptions, reactions, and decisions, because once you can do that, nobody has to tell you that you're smart. Your decisions will show it. And perhaps the most important shift of all is this. Don't try to see the world exactly as you want it to be. Try to see it clearly enough to make better choices. That's where real wisdom begins.